Today is April 13th, 2020, and Anthony Melchior and myself, Glenn Hausman, have Ty Turner, CEO of Propel Companies, Brad Rahinsky, CEO of Hotel Equities, and we're getting a great legislative update from Capitol Hill from the one and only Chip Rogers of AHLA. Stay tuned, and thanks for joining our show. Wow, that was weird. That seemed to have stopped DOA there. But hey, welcome, man. How are you?
Good. How are you? So we have a pandemic. Everything shut down. And then right before the broadcast, what happened to you, Glenn?
All right. So about 5 minutes ago, I totally lost power. So I think it's a good thing to say. If for some reason I disappear, well, it's because of the high winds and the rain and all the crappy weather that we're having over here in Long Island.
Yeah, we're having 70-mile-an-hour winds, apparently, in some places.
All right. So I hope you guys out there had a good Passover at the end of last week. You had a terrific Easter over the weekend. Any other holidays you have? So before we get going and bring in our guests, I want to thank the good folks over at Bartech for giving us a nice little sponsorship for the last couple of weeks and this one as well. Thank you, Bartech, for helping us get through in this time of need to deliver all this important information to all of you folks out there all over the world wanting to keep touch base and build this community with us. Check them out at bartech.com or find an email at info@bartech.com. And also, we got our good friends over at Cintas that are supporting us over here. So thank you to Cintas, right, Anthony?
Like magic, it just comes on. You know,
I know.
People call me all the time. And it's like, hey, you know, we have some medical people in the hotel. We have nurses. What do we do? And like I've been saying, call Cintas. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited about today. We have some information coming our way, which I'm really excited about.
We've got a great show with you guys for you guys today. Thanks for being with us on Monday, Mr. Brad Rahinsky, President and CEO of Hotel Equities, and Mr. Ty Turman, CEO of Propel Companies. Great to see you guys. I got to ask you the first question. You start this brand new company, you leave a job after 30 years. Boy, that's a rough timing on your part, but to be fair, the rest of us seems like we're starting businesses all over from scratch anyway these days.
Yeah. You know, hey, thanks, Glenn, for having me. Appreciate you and Anthony inviting us to be a part of the show today. I've had that question asked me on more than one occasion. They said, Ty, you were with Marriott all those years. What in the world were you thinking retiring when you did? But, I got to tell you, the times that we're going through right now, as we all say, are unprecedented. And really and truly, I think regardless of where you are in this industry, we're all faced with the same challenges. I know my friends at Marriott, I talk to them weekly, and as you know, they've been hit really hard. And we're all going through this together. So for me personally, it's a great time to grow. So I'm challenged by it like everyone else, but it's all going to work out well.
And Ty, what does Propel Companies do exactly?
So Propel Companies is a hospitality company. We're based out of San Antonio, Texas. We currently own and or operate a total of 8 hotels, and we have a number of hotels in our pipeline. It actually, Anthony, is a group of 4 different companies. We're a development company, a management company. We manage for ourselves as well as do third party. We also have a PEO, which is as you know, professional executive employment organization called Hospitality Resources Group. So we have individuals who come to us and they may not necessarily need third party management, but they're looking for a way to outsource their accounting, their payroll, HR, and benefits. So we do that. And then lastly, we're a construction company. Carlos Valenzuela, who runs our construction group, has been in the industry for 30 plus years, built 40 plus hotels. And so we build for ourselves as well as we look for opportunities for other people.
Wow, that's awesome. Brad, let's hear from you. What are you thinking about today as we broadcast this show live? Because lots been going on for the last month. How are you feeling where you're at today? What's the status of what's going on in your organization?
Yeah, well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. Ty, it's great to see you. Ty and I have been friends for about 10 years, and Propel couldn't have picked a better leader at a better time. So we're fortunate to have Ty and his leadership during this difficult time. Well, look, I think Ty said it well, Glenn. Leaders lead regardless of what's going on in the environment. And title has nothing to do with leadership. We're fortunate. My leadership team every day gets together, and as we did in the past, to make sure that the next 24 hours is going to be our best 24 hours. And I couldn't be more proud and encouraged with some of the things that we've been doing during the past 30, 45 days to make sure that Hotel Equities not only comes out of this thing, but comes out of it swinging, ready, loaded for bear, and ready to really take the next step in terms of our growth and development.
So explain exactly what Hotel Equities is doing and what the company does, because some people may not know exactly what they do.
Sure, Anthony. So Hotel Equities, we're headquartered in Atlanta, Georgia. We've been around for a little over 30 years. Currently, we have about 140 hotels in our portfolio. We own, develop, and operate, and we go across all brands, and we go across all segments. We go everywhere from upper upscale luxury independent to select service properties with Marriott, Hilton, IHG, and Hyatt, to independent small boutique properties. As I mentioned, we've been around for about 30 years. We're also partnered with, we JV with a group called Virtual Partners, who's our merger partner in Scottsdale, Arizona, and they created a capital arm for us, Anthony, which allows us to go out and not only go out and acquire and develop our own properties, but also assist our owner partners and our developer partners with some projects all up and down the cap stack, where typically we couldn't have done that historically.
Are you finding that some brands, and I don't want you to out any brands, some brands are doing a little bit better job than other brands as far as supporting all your hotels?
Yeah, it's a great question. I look, there's no playbook for what's going on today. You can take 9/11, SARS, the GFC, and keep on going down the line, and you can combine those. And frankly, none of them has had the impact that COVID-19 has had on our industry in terms of the acceleration and the trajectory of the erosion. So I think everybody's absolutely doing the best they can. It is interesting to your question, though, Anthony, to see how there are some differences and nuances to the way that some of the brands are going at this versus others. I think, though, in a comprehensive way, they're all going at it, looking at this as partners to see how they can assist groups like mine in terms of development and for some forbearance and deferment where some obligations are required. But what will be interesting to see, going back to your question, Anthony, is what this looks like 30, 60, 90, a year after we come out of this and some stability and we get some footing underneath us to see how those brands react then.
Right. And are you seeing any brand make a change, a policy change, or anything that surprises you, either good or bad?
I think they've all done the things that they feel that good partners should do. Some have, I think, maybe taken some additional steps versus some others, but I think they're all looking at it in a very equitable, strategic way right now. At the end of the day, a lot of those big brands that you're referring to, they have the street that they have to respond to, so they're looking at things a little bit differently than a group like mine or Tide would, in terms of we're private companies. So they have some additional stakeholders that they have to respond to and think about in terms of what should they do and what sort of policy they need to drive down to their franchisee partners. But all in all, I've been pleased with the way the brands have stepped up and have looked at this situation and the way that they're providing some assistance to groups like mine and Ties in terms of fee relief and marketing relief and some other relief that's going to get kicked down the curve a little while.
Right now, I've been hearing right out of the gate, a lot of the franchisees were asking for stuff that some think are reasonable, some think are unreasonable. But isn't that always the way it goes? So, Ty, maybe we get a little understanding of how you think the owners and operators and the franchisees can really get together on the side with the brands to make sure everybody is really aligned here with the same mission going forward to try to find success together in the rest of this year and next year.
Sure. Well, just to kind of piggyback on Brad's comments, our portfolio is heavy with Marriott. That's all we have right now. We have one IHG product, a Holiday Inn Express, that hasn't opened yet. So I would say that very clearly what I was impressed with, always being on the inside of the company, you obviously see what Marriott puts out, but to be a franchisee now and to see the information that's been sent out, truly remarkable. They have communicated extremely well. My team and I couldn't be more thankful for what they've done. And I think they've been extremely accommodating. I've had to pick up the phone on more than one occasion, reach out to various departments internally with Marriott and say, hey, look, we're faced with this challenge right now. What can I do presently? Or is there anything that you're going to be offering us with? Having talked with a number of friends in the industry, I think that's the great thing about our industry. As large as we are, we're still small.
Totally.
We know a lot of people. And, the thing I think was very common came out right away. A lot of people immediately went to the brand companies and said, hey, what kind of fee relief are you going to offer? That's the big one. But the reality of it is these brand companies, their fees are going down just as the owners are. So I don't know that it's necessarily reasonable for franchisees to immediately expect that, hey, brands are going to cut their fees. But I know, at least speaking for Marriott, they did find some fees that they could trim back. And I think they continue to evaluate on an ongoing basis where there are opportunities. I know that there were initiatives that Marriott had rolled out. They were pushing down to the property levels that they have cut those. They've either eliminated those or they've extended the timelines before those initiatives must be implemented. I think from the franchise community going back to the brand companies, I think the single most important thing is to make sure you're communicating on a regular basis. Knowing Brad as well as I do, and myself, I know picking up the phone and calling the brand execs and saying, hey, look, this is what we're dealing with right now. Are you hearing from other owners that this is a problem, and how are they dealing with it? And oh, by the way, is it something that you are all going to be looking at on a long-term basis to correct or to help with?
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. So let's get into some of the questions that we're getting here, because we are getting a lot of questions I got on my feed. Apparently, Deidre Schwartz is still traveling. She's been in 3 hotels this past week, and as she was moving across the country, she said none of them were wearing masks or gloves at the front desk, and she didn't see any hand sanitizer either. That's not really what the question is. That was just to get Anthony to raise his eyebrows like that and get that shock look on his face. But Brad, do you have an estimate of the percent of assets that may not reopen? Is there a correlation in the hotel level, full service, limited service, luxury, independence? And we're not talking your business in particular, just what your sense is in the industry in general.
Yeah, well, first of all, Deidre, God bless you and stay safe. We appreciate you traveling. I hope you're able to stay safe. And surprised to hear that the hotels you're staying at are not masked up and wearing gloves. We certainly are. We think that's prudent and the right approach right now for our properties that have stayed open. Glenn, to get to the question, my crystal ball certainly no better than anybody else's. I'd like to think that the properties that prior to the event were performing well will come out of this thing prepared and ready to go and come out of it swinging. I do think that there were some properties, we say as an industry that we're not overbuilt, we're under demolished. And I think there are certainly some properties that could potentially not come out of this thing. That being said, those properties were probably not in a good position prior to the event, COVID-19 taking place. Once again, if you were disciplined in your approach to operations and you had the right brand and the right location and you had the right leadership in those properties, you should ultimately be able to come out of this thing okay.
Right. And the good times that we were enjoying in the industry could have masked some of those issues, right, that were lurking below the surface. And now, obviously, those will become more evident. What's your opinion on that issue, Ty?
I totally concur with Brad. The question is always whose crystal ball is the best when we're looking at this thing into the future. I think brands that have historically performed well will continue to perform well. I think, Glenn, as you know, my background before coming to Propel companies was in development for Marriott, running
for like decades.
For the Western region. And so I think is in the development side of things, there are times where you see people build hotels in questionable markets or questionable locations. I think those are the ones that are going to be challenged the most for sure. As Brad just alluded to, those hotels that were maybe questionable to begin with in their performance, they may not come back.
Right. I got some more questions for you guys. Brad, what are the top 3 things when you ramp up / recovery to do at the property level, ensuring both staff and customers are safe? You heard anything from the brands, perhaps, on new standards, deep cleaning, PPE for staff, all of that kind of thing?
Yeah, great question, Glenn. Well, and look,
whether it's Mark Anthony's Crimmy's question, I want to give him full credit for that.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark. Mark's an old friend too. I got my friends and family teed up for questions. These are softballs, Glenn.
Yeah.
So thank you for listening.
We're just getting you, greased up for the hard ones. When you're ready for that, just let me know.
Look, Mark's a great operator in New York City, and they're feeling it more than anybody right now. But my money's on him. And look, whether it's the CDC, the World Health Organization, OSHA, our brand partners, we took all of the guidance that they were providing in terms of what we should be doing to our hotels to sanitize, to keep them clean and safe, and to be able to be well prepared to come out of this thing. And then we bolted on our own protocol, Hotel Equities protocol, which frankly was all of that compounded, and then we put steroids on that to make sure that we were going above and beyond what the table stakes were, so that when we do have folks staying with us today, and when we do come out of this and start to get compression back in the market and consumer confidence again, that our properties, that there's not even a question that they're ready for our customers to come back and our guests to come stay with us again. So all those things that sort of seem like a 101 type blocking and tackling, we've taken all of that, Glenn, and then we've amped all of that up. One of the things that we're doing across our portfolio during this time of slower occupancy certainly is we're doing deep cleans throughout our portfolio to ensure that when the demand does start to come back, they're walking into rooms that are ready for them, feel good. The consumer knows that they're in a safe place to stay, and that part of their stay is a non-issue for them. They know that they're staying in a good hotel.
Yeah, and I think that was well said. It's like a lot of people look at the CDC and other avenues to what to do. I think right now it's kind of in front of you. It's like obviously do what the CDC and everyone else is saying, but you have to put it on steroids. You have to, if there's any time to get anal in your life and to get really over, those people that we see walking through the airports or on the airplanes that are overly sanitizing everything. We need to be that person right now. We need to be overly prepared. And it's the reason my eyebrows went up, Glenn, is because to walk into a hotel today and not see someone with mask or gloves on or sanitizer is offensive. The people on the front lines right now, they don't need any more victims. The victims don't want to be victims. You certainly don't want to add to the problem. So you may be, people are taking a cavalier approach, say they'll be fine, but you're literally putting other people's lives in danger. So that's shocking to me.
Yeah, it certainly is. And Anthony and I were talking about this last week, as a matter of fact, right here on this very program. Now, we got a little statement from Kyle Garnett, Director of Sales at Amigo Hospitality, that extended stay hotels are doing well in our area, and they're still here, and they're dealing with tornado relief. I wanted to point out to everyone, check out our catalog either on Anthony's LinkedIn page or Facebook page or on my LinkedIn page, because we did a show with extended stay properties just last week talking about all of these issues and why that segment seems to be poised real well for future success.
So I have a quick question. A couple of weeks ago, obviously employees, everybody was talking about employees and relief and unemployment. What are employees getting now? Are people getting their employment checks? Are people feeling that they're getting what they need? Or because some people I'm talking to feel desperate and they're not getting what they thought they would be getting. That goes from small business owners all the way to a line employee.
Yeah, I know that, we were certainly, like so many others. I know Brad and I've talked about this. We had to lay off a number of employees with the lower occupancies that we were experiencing. And I think the one thing that you can't do enough of during times like this, being very much a people person and coming from a culture where, Mr. Marriott always said, take good care of your associates. They'll take good care of the guests and they'll return again and again. It's kind of ingrained in me. And so from me and my staff, I think we just want to continue to communicate with them to verify, hey, we've provided you the guidelines to be able to reach out to the local unemployment agencies. Are they helpful? If you are having challenges, what can we do to help you? And I think, Anthony, just to continue to over communicate with them. My senior leadership team sat down and said, what can we do to have touch points on a regular basis with these individuals to make sure if it's so regular calls, do we send them text? I think in general, we're finding that people are getting their unemployment, but they're asking the question, when can I come back? What's that going to look like?
Yeah. Makes sense. All right, we got another great question here for both of you folks. What are your top 3 revenue management initiatives to ramp back up so we can bring team members back to work as soon as humanly possible? And that last part I put in on my own.
Yeah. I will tell you, I heard a comment made by someone who's mentioned extended stay. That's my background. That's where I started in the industry. I was with Residence Inn before Marriott bought the company. And it's been amazing to see that during every downturn that we have, the extended stay segment, even though it may struggle, has always continued to perform at a slightly better level. And that even speaks true for our own hotels right now. We have several extended stay products, and they're consistently performing better than the transient-based hotels. But Glenn, I think in general, the one thing that being a guy whose background is sales, we've been very careful stressing to our sales team, to our GM, saying, look, just because occupancies are lower right now doesn't mean you sit on the sidelines and wait for things to turn back.
Right.
Make sure. So right now they're consistently reaching out to their top accounts, and not necessarily just top accounts, all their accounts, to say, hey, we're here for you. How are things in your business? Is there anything that we can do for you? And when business travel does return, you let us know. We're here for you. You just got to do a lot of that right now.
And I think the people that don't do that are in trouble, because this is not about selling right now. This is about building relationships. And we had this conversation last week on the show where a lot of salespeople don't know how to sell. And someone said 4 out of 10 of their salespeople, when they said, do you feel good developing relationships? They're like, no, we're not really good at that. And a salesperson saying they're not good at building relationships, like a pitcher saying, I don't know how to throw a ball.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Jennifer Dowdy, our VP of Sales and Marketing, she's conducting several calls a week with her sales team. They're sharing ideas. I refer to it, this is time for guerrilla warfare tactics. What worked before things went down don't work today. You got to turn stones over all the time. What's been great to see about this is our salespeople, they're highly motivated individuals, but let's be honest, their families are challenged right now. They may have people who are ill, and to keep them motivated, these calls that they're scheduling are really helping them. They're they're sharing ideas. What new lead sources are they going through? And I think coming out of this, that's going to pay great dividends.
Right, Brad. We have on Chris Green a couple of days a week. He's the CEO of Chesapeake Hospitality, a management company, and he said that he's talking to a lot of other management company CEOs, guys like you, for example, and there's much more cooperation and kind of working together for everybody to kind of find success together on the other end of this. Are you experiencing the same sort of thing with our great folks within our industry?
Absolutely. The only want to add one thing. I think Anthony and Ty were spot on with everything we just said about the rate and the sales strategy. And now's the time to get after it, not to sit back and woe's me. The only thing that I would include is how imperative it is that we as an industry maintain rate integrity, particularly at the retail level. We made that big mistake back in 9/11. We made the same mistake back in 08 and 09, and I hope we don't make that mistake here again. It seems that we're holding there, so I like to see that. To get back to your question, Glenn, look, there's a brotherhood within this industry. It's I think it's one of the things that makes us unique and great as an industry is that there is the ability to, in times like these, to get together with your peer group that you trust, respect, and admire, and bounce things off the wall. This is not a time for taking your ball and going home. This is a time for more is more, and we share objectives and initiatives and ideas within that peer group. Chris and I get on the phone often here in the past 30 days to bounce things off one another. Most of what he says is really smart, and we've stolen and initiated on our end. Most of what I say, not so much, and I'm sure he hasn't taken any of that. But you need to have that close circle, that unit that you trust, because this is a more is more moment in our industry, and to have guys and gals that you respect and admire, and to take some of their initiatives and apply it to your own organization. If that saves one job, then it was time well spent.
And I think that's well said. And someone just asked, businesses and individuals are struggling to get what they need. And so we're not saying that everyone's getting what they need, and we're not saying that the system's perfect. What we're saying, exactly what Brad said, is now's the time to reach out. Now's the time to go to your peers. Now's the time to go to Hospitality Success on Facebook, which is my Facebook group, which we're doing for free. We're answering questions. We're trying to get you answers. Our podcast, our live, is kind of bringing Brad and Ty and everybody else together to get you answers. So if you have specific answers, Samina, I think that's how you say your name, please ask us either here or DM us. So that's what this is about. And Brad, I don't think you could have said it better. This is not a time to take your ball and go home. It is the time to say, hey, I need help. And the good news, bad news is when everything seems to be doing well and the economy's doing well and everybody, all your friends and all your peers seem to be doing okay, and you're struggling, you're afraid to ask for help because you feel like I'm not as good or I'm not as powerful or I did something wrong and I'm a loser. Now we're all in the same position. We all need help. There's not one of us on this call that doesn't need help, whether it be somebody in our family struggling, whether it be financial help for ourselves or our friends. Everyone needs support. And that's what a federal government's for, and that's what unemployment's for, and that's what networking is for. So I just double down on what Brad said.
Thanks.
Yeah. So, all right. So Matthew Taramina says they're talking weekly with all the wedding couples and family reunions for the entire calendar year, just to connect with them, just to make sure they know what's going on. Makes a whole lot of sense. Now, we got one interesting question from your LinkedIn page, Anthony, from Brian Grenier. Will hotel design see major changes in the communal spaces that have been dominating recent prototypes lately? The whole idea of getting people out of the room to interact with each other in the lobby, or at least be alone together in the lobby, has been a phenomenon that we've been seeing for quite some time. Maybe a little bit too early to make predictions on what's going to happen with this trend in the future, but you've got to be thinking about this right now. You've got to be thinking, is this the way of the future? Are we going to go back to the way things were in the 1980s with a little tiny lobby and you go straight up to your room? Gentlemen, who wants to kind of grab at this one? Let's go to Ty. You look like you're about to say something.
I will say, well, I'm an extreme optimist. Okay. And I know
love that.
Like everyone else right now, they're so sensitive to touch and being around people. But I think part of human nature is just being around other people. And I don't think I think people may be uncomfortable for a period of time, speaking for myself included. I mean, my gosh, I catch myself going out just to run a quick errand and I'm wondering, who or what's around me right now. But I think we'll get through that. And we'll continue to see design change. It doesn't necessarily, I think, that's the interesting thing about design. It continues to evolve all the time.
Right. Yeah, and it will be interesting, I think, to see how design overall starts to evolve when we start to consider that we need to have different health initiatives maybe in place. I know one of the top major hotel companies is already talking about creating as much of a touchless guest room as possible. So even though we're in a difficult time right now, I think it's going to create a lot of invention and innovation that's going to really change the way that we stay and will make hotels better and encourage people to want to go out because they'll have that sense of security, right, Ty?
Glenn, you hit on something that I really firmly believe. I think when I'm watching other industry leaders talk in other industries, as difficult as these times are right now, I think what it challenges us as a nation and as a people to do is to get creative. I think when we come out of this, we may see some of the greatest inventions come out or innovations that will truly revolutionize the country.
Yeah, I think the technology that we're 5 years away is going to be around the corner because of just the need for it. And I think you're going to see a step up or step down, however you want to look at it, from lobbies. I think what you're going to do is you're going to see, as we come out of this, you're going to see just furniture disappear and you're going to see things open up. And then as people reinvent their brand, you're going to see all those thoughts put into the lobby and rooms and the like. But I think the beginning stage is kind of what we talked about before. Whereas I think you're going to see a lot of people upset with other people when they're not taking the precautions. So if you're at a front desk and there's a guest behind you that's literally a foot behind you, you're going to see a lot more turning around of, can you please step back? And I think in the beginning, the design is just going to be part of it in the next couple of years. You're going to see it. There's no doubt in my mind you're going to see it. You're going to see a lot less touch points as we talked about. But I think human behavior and just being sensitive to to people around you, I think you're going to really see in the next 6 months, different behaviors and people getting a little bit more, like I would never, if somebody was in my face, I would never say anything before. And I'm not a road rage guy and I'm not that guy. But I'll tell you, if I go to the grocery store, as soon as they open things up and somebody's literally in my face, I'm going to step away or I'm going to ask them to step away. And I think those are the things that we have to be careful of, even in our hotels. Like, just because if we open up, does that mean we don't wear masks? Does that mean we don't do 6 feet separation? So I think every single person, we've got to understand that every single person is going to be like us. I am going to get on a plane and I'm going to travel. and I'm going to be that guy that is not afraid to go to a ball game, and I'm not afraid to go to a movie. I'm that guy. But I do have a family I got to worry about, and I got to protect them, so I protect myself. And I also, and some people are going to be a lot more sensitive than I will be, in not wanting to travel. So I think we got to be very aware of that. The human behavior is going to change, at least in the short term. I think we have short-term memories. Yeah. I think we have short-term memories, and I think in 6 months to a year, maybe a year, a little over a year and a half, it's going to go back.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really the way of humanity. We thought that things would never go back to normal after 9/11. We thought that things would never go back to normal after the Great Recession. While our idea of normal may have changed, more people than ever started to travel after each of those periods. I'm a firm believer that there's been a systemic shift in our society. People put more value on traveling and experiences than buying things and staying home. And even though the situation may make people stay at home for an extended period of time, outside larger TVs, I think we pretty much got everything we need, and experiences and being out there with fellow human beings and having those moments in the real world are going to be the most important going forward.
You know, even in my family, what comes up the most is our experiences from our vacations. My kids can't remember 99% of the stuff we bought them for Christmas and spent all this money over the years, but they can remember almost every moment of a vacation.
All right. Gentlemen, guess who's here? Chip Rogers has arrived. So let's bring him into the conversation. Even though this conversation is going great and we could go on for 2 hours, I want to hear what's going on with the one and only Mr. Chip Rogers, President and CEO of the American Hotel and Lodging Association. Chip, you've been working harder than ever for all of us. How are you holding up over there?
It's been tough.
Yeah.
Question about it. We keep looking for good news, and while nationally and internationally, you may have begun to see some good news in the number of cases and sadly the number of deaths finally plateauing, at least for the industry and occupancy rates and those that matter for maintaining a business, they remain at historic lows. And where this turns around and we start seeing the upswing, I'm not sure anyone really knows at this point.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Nobody does know. It is a guessing game. But where are we right now in what you're thinking about and helping out our community out there? You did that first round. Everything seemed to go great. You're working on additional support for our business. Can you give us an update on where you think we are with that? I may be a little off on my facts because I tried to stay away from the news this weekend.
That might be the best thing if everybody stayed away from the news every day, not just this, but right? Yeah. So where we are with it is the CARES Act came out, and you always have to put this in the proper perspective because I think people forget just what was accomplished. And I want to give kudos to all of our politicians. You don't hear people say that too often, but if you think about,
I'm not even sure I heard you correct. Is that?
If you think about what they knew when they began this process and what we know today, it has changed dramatically. So there's actually so far 3 pieces of legislation that passed. The third one is the CARES Act, which deals with how you throw a lifeline to businesses and employees to keep them afloat during this time. Well, when they began processing the information they had at the time to create the CARES Act, I'm not sure anyone knew it would be to this extent. If you recall, at that time, the president and the CDC had already put out guidelines on shutting things down for about 15 days. How could you have a 15-day period? That was then followed with a 30-day period. So at the time, it was probably people were looking at this as a 15-day shutdown, and then how do we recover after that? So they created the CARES Act, the largest single spending act in the history of humankind. Keep that in mind. Not just in the U.S., but the largest ever by any government anywhere. And they did that in a matter of about 5 or 6 days. And so then you take that and you begin the implementation process. And the implementation process is always much more difficult. So when we hear people talk about, it's going to take a year and a half to get a vaccine, it's going to take this many months to come up with some sort of therapeutic response to the virus. On the government side, they're really trying to do the same thing in even a shorter time period. So it came out with the CARES Act. It offered a lot of promise, and some people are in fact getting loans. Of course, as you know, on the individual basis, the $1,200 checks are going out or direct depositing. But the banks were never set up for this. The SBA was certainly never set up for this. More requests for SBA loans in like a 48-hour period than they did the entirety of last year. So that is kind of the wall that we've been hitting. And then the second part for our industry specifically, yes, we were very successful in getting language put into the CARES Act that would allow individual hotels to be treated individually as opposed to collectively among all of their ownership. That was absolutely critical. I'll give you the numbers on that. Had we not done that, the Paycheck Protection Program and the CARES Act would have covered about 60% of the hotels in the United States. By getting that language included, we estimate it covers about 99% of the hotels in the United States.
Wow.
An enormous difference.
Good job.
We're going through the process of getting those loans. We've heard some success stories, but there's still a lot of problems out there. The 250% of payroll, average monthly payroll, does not cover all the costs. At AHLA, we just put out a report. In fact, it's not even public yet. We'll be doing it in the next few days, so you're the first one to learn about this. We estimate we looked at thousands of hotels and what are their costs, right? And under the CARES Act, you have four what are known as covered costs, which include payroll, rent, interest on debt, and utilities. Those covered costs for a typical hotel operationally only covers about 46% of their average operating costs. So if you're only getting 250% of the payroll portion of those covered costs to try to keep your hotel afloat, as you can see, the math doesn't work out there. And so, and by the way, the date that the federal government checks to see whether you've rehired all of your people, the law right now is at June 30th, and there's no way on earth, no way that the hotel industry will be back by June 30th. So we're starting to point out these things that don't seem to work in the law and get Congress hopefully to come back at the end of this month and correct them. I know there's a long answer, but I wanted to give you
well, it was a very thorough answer and an answer that we needed to hear. I heard something that was troubling last week in regards to the SBA loans, that there was some sort of computer problem and some people may have to reapply for them. Am I hearing the wrong thing, or is that absolutely correct? Because honestly, I need to know if I need to do it again.
No, I don't think anyone has to reapply.
All right, good.
SBA went down for a brief period of time. Again, they're trying to accomplish something they've never accomplished before.
Right. And I think people need to be really understanding of government in this time of need. When you're dealing with all of these vast numbers of people and so much has to get done, our systems are just simply not built for that kind of volume, right? I mean, everyone gave the Obama administration a lot of flack for the first few days that the websites were open to register for the healthcare problem, and that was just a fraction of what we're dealing with currently today. So everyone try to be a little bit patient out there and allow the government for once to do something for us, because they're actually trying this time.
Yeah, I think they're trying. I think the banks are trying. Keep in mind, yes, the SBA, before this even happened, didn't have enough employees to do what they were supposed to do. So now you put this on top of them. It would be kind of like going, sometimes you've got to go get your driver's license renewed or something like that. And you get there and you get in line and you're like, wow, this is taking forever. They need more people. That was the way the SBA was before this happened. Now imagine the government saying, okay, every single person in America has to get their driver's license renewed next week.
Right.
And that's about what it would do. That's kind of what we're looking at.
Yeah, and I think it's a really good point, Chip, that you make, is that they're not built for this, and we have to have patience. Whether it be the electric companies, whether it be the internet companies, whether it be the government, everyone is at their wit's end, and everyone is basically trying to do the best they can. So we have to have as much patience as possible. Unfortunately, and I know some friends that they really don't have a lot of patience because they need the cash today. And they need the money today for their business and for their mortgage. But the good news is there is a lot of extension. I hear here in New York City, you're not allowed to basically throw people out. There's a lot of companies that are not they're not allowed to foreclose, and there's a lot of banks that are giving you opportunity to extend your mortgages. So I think people just got to really, as Brad said before, is you've got to ask a lot of questions and you got to seek for information, because the information's out there. And I don't think I haven't heard that there's not a bank or a company that's not willing to help you out right now. I think that's really, really important.
I do want to jump in before anyone else speaks that Michelle Thomas says that she had to reapply for SBA after talking with them directly. If you applied before 3/31/20, you have to reapply. So I just wanted to put that out there. Again, I encourage everybody to check for yourselves. Don't take everything we say as 100% fact, as things are very fluid and are changing out there. Brad, Chip's working really hard for guys like you and companies like yours out there. What are some of the things that he's accomplished that you're being able to leverage right now?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Chip. It's good to see you and the AHLA for doing all of the hard work that's being done right now behind the scenes to make this as good as it can get. I think, as Chip said, well, perfect is the enemy of great, Glenn. I think we needed to get the bill passed and get it moving, and I think that's what took place. It was nice to see that for once that politics was overridden by policy, and we had some adults in the room that got this thing pushed through. I think the ability to now come back and modify some of the language that may not have been comprehensive enough or didn't have long enough a tail on it, to Chip's comment about June 30th, I think that hopefully there'll be an opportunity to go back in and modify that and make it even more meaningful and impactful for the industry. I think, once again, as Chip said, that everybody's being a good actor right now, and I think that there is this common bond between the lenders, the industry, the franchisors, franchisees, developers, to see what we all need to do, and we're all pulling the rope in the same direction here to get past these next 30, 60, 90. Right. Where this is ultimately going to shake out, though, is once everybody has the triple P funds in hand, how they allocate those funds, making sure that they're using them the way that they were intended, so that you can come out of this thing swinging. And then what happens to the industry, how quickly our guests, our customers, come back and start to have some confidence in being able to travel again. I heard Anthony say he's getting on a plane, he's going to a sporting event. I think, if nothing else, this last 30 days of isolation has shown me the absolute how essential it is for human interaction, for folks to get together again. And the comment or the question about weddings and how we'll do group meetings and group business going forward, and will our hotels be developed differently? I think we're going to be more thoughtful. Obviously, we're going to apply some of these learnings to what's taking place within our buildings, but I think ultimately people need that human interaction. This has shown me how essential that is to our very core. So I look forward to that day when confidence starts to come back. And ultimately, whether it's 16 months, 18 months, or 24 months, where this thing really gets right, obviously, is when we eradicate this virus, this violent virus, and come up with a vaccine. Until then, complete confidence won't be there against this. But there's going to be another, whatever that another is, black swan event, whether it's a virus or some other event that takes place. But what I've seen is an incredibly resilient traveling public that, to someone's point earlier, that ultimately we come back, and not only come back, but we then take that to another level.
Yep.
It's the need for travel, the need for interaction and face-to-face contact, and that won't go away, and this won't kill that.
No, I agree with you 100%. Chip, if I can ask you a question, what's the number one question you're getting from the small hotel owner right now?
Great.
What is the one thing that they're frantically calling you about, saying, please help us with this?
It is the PPP loans, and it's some of the things I talked about. So the number one issue are the PPP loans, because that was what was advertised as kind of fine, and it could be lifeline. There's no question about it. But I think as people began running the numbers, they began to see, well, wow, if they don't extend this date a little bit, this forgivable loan, which is the way it's supposed to be characterized, may turn into an actual loan. And do I really want to take on more debt if I'm actually questioning whether my hotel can make it? And so I think by changing that date, and look, we've talked to the administration, we've talked to leadership on both sides, and everybody seems to agree that the date was just simply an arbitrary number. I've had at least 5 senators tell me, yeah, we're going to change that date. So that's good. But again, it has to happen, right? A promise doesn't get you anywhere. So I think if that happens and it gives people more time, because you think about it this way, you take on the money, you take on the loan, whatever that amount is, 250% of your average monthly payroll. We'd love to see that go higher. We're advocating for 8 times covered costs, by the way, in the next version. But let's just say it's 250% payroll. If you push that date out far enough, then you will spend all that money ultimately on payroll, and you'll have it all forgiven, and that won't be a problem. But if the date stays at June 30th, I don't see how that happens, and people are going to end up with a lot more debt. Another question I'm getting is the CMBS lending, which I can talk about if you want.
We do.
Huge issue.
Yeah, let's get to that in 1 second. But Mitesh Patel says, what do the companies do that already closed on these loans, and we are on the hook to start recall of associates immediately? It sounds to me, Chip, that you're going to say that Congress is going to work this out and push back that date, correct?
Well, they say they're going to push back the date. Obviously, you need to, whatever actions you're taking right now need to be actions based on the current law. not on what you hope will happen or what may happen or what some politician says is going to happen. Would definitely take your actions now based on the current law. If it changes, then you can make changes along with it.
Right. All right. So, Ty, you were going to say something?
No.
No. All right. CMBS. Chip, that's a big issue that I'm hearing about, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. And it seems to me that a lot of the hoteliers that I'm talking to every single day, on air and off air, are like worried that this is going to be the biggest problem yet, that there are not going to be any safety nets in this area. What is your update?
Yeah. So look, CMBS lending is a whole different ballgame because it's not highly regulated by the federal government. And unlike traditional lending where you have a lender and a borrower, and the lender can say, okay, I'm going to give you some forgiveness to the borrower, or we're going to change your terms. We're going to relax the terms so that you can ultimately make all your payments. That's not the way CMBS is. You have a borrower, and then once all those products are sold, you ultimately kind of end up with hundreds of lenders. And so there's no way to go to each one of them and agree on the same type of forbearance. So how do you regulate that? How do you change that? You could have the government mandates that just says, okay, there's no foreclosures of any type anywhere. There are immediate and systemic problems with doing something like that, but that is a possibility. Or we think a better alternative is for the federal government through the Main Street Act, which is another part of the CARES Act that's not part of PPP. It's that other $500 billion in that fund. Through the Main Street Act, we believe there should be a special portion of that, and it doesn't have to take much. In fact, we're estimating only about $7 billion to provide resources to those with CMBS loans for them to make the payments over the next year. And then they could pay that money back at some later date. And we have all that, and we'll be rolling out a plan like that we're going to be pushing. But we see that as the only realistic alternative. We know the resources are there. But Glenn, to your point, if we don't solve this, you're talking about 20 to 25% of the hotels that will probably face some form of foreclosure. Well, not form of foreclosure. They'll face foreclosure in the next 12 months, only because there is no forgiveness in the CMBS deals. I mean, it is flat. This is what's going to happen on this date if you don't make your payments.
Whew. Are either of you gentlemen dealing with stuff like this? And if so, how are you processing it? And if not, lucky you.
Yeah, we're not currently dealing with any CMBS.
All right, good. So, Brad?
A few of our folks, Glenn, a few of our owners that we partner with are looking at that right now but fortunately, the ones that are in an okay position right now to be able to handle their obligations for the next 3, 6, 9 months. We're hoping that there is some guidance that would provide some easing there on the covenants, so that to Chip's point, maybe that it gives them some additional time to do things that they wouldn't have had otherwise.
All right, so another good question coming from Anthony's LinkedIn page. How do we correct the unemployment extra of $600 a week against actual per hour income?
Yeah, that's a tough one because in a way it does encourage people to leave their jobs. And so just so you know, unemployment insurance is different in all 50 states plus Washington, D.C. So as I even look at my own our own situation here in D.C., you have unemployment insurance that is one thing in Maryland, one thing in Virginia, and one thing in Washington, D.C. Now, keep in mind, the rate you're looking at is where you work, not where you live. So that's critically important in case you live someplace like the D.C. area where you might live in a state.
Right.
But I think what Congress tried to do, and here in the Metro D.C. areas, by the way, that equates to about $1,000 a week in take-home pay after taxes. So you take the $600 and you add it to what the current benefits were, which are around $400 for each of those 3 localities. It's about $1,000 a week. So for many people, it's an incentive to get off of employment and go on to unemployment. Now, I would argue that given the fact that these benefits are only going to last for a short period of time, you're taking a pretty big risk if you leave a job at a time where we have skyrocketing unemployment, hoping that you'll be able to get back on that job. That's a bit of a risk that I hope people won't take. And then keep in mind other states where the unemployment per week amount is much lower than it is here in the DC area. It may not equate to $1,000 a week. It may only be $800 a week. But my point is that I think what they tried to do was just come up with a number that they could add on top of all the 50 states plus DC, a reasonable number. And it would have been very difficult to have that number fluctuate from state to state. In fact, I'm not sure how they would have done that. Some argument could be made that you could not receive a benefit greater than what your take-home pay already was. I think the only challenge with that is the paperwork and verifying every bit of that across the country. That might be a little difficult. So I'm not sure they're going to fix that one.
Oof. That's rough. All right, let's see if we got any more questions.
But Chip,
Yep.
real
Go
quick,
for it.
Chip, if I can go back to what you said. If you don't have a job, yes, when we open up, there are going to be plenty of opportunities, but there's going to be plenty of people looking for those opportunities. So right now, if you can afford to, if you have the ability to, now is the time to double down on your education. Now is the time to double down on skill level. I know a certificate from eCornell would go a long way coming out of this. If you're a revenue manager and now you have a revenue management like 360 from eCornell, I think now is the time to really think about positioning yourself and competing. Because coming out of this, you're going to have a lot of opportunity, but there's going to be a lot of employers that have a lot of opportunity to hire the best of the best. Whereas before it was very desperate. We would go on the street corner and say, you have a heart rate, can you please come to my hotel and help me? Now it's going to be the opposite of that. Now you're going to have the creme de la creme on the street looking for employment. And so now is an opportunity. If you want to go back to school and get that certificate, I would highly suggest you do that.
Yeah, that's good. And don't you have some sort of, didn't you convince them to like knock down the price on that or something, Anthony?
Well, actually, if you go to eCornell and you put in the code hotel, HOTEL, 20, you get a 25% discount on all of their eCornell products. Thanks for reminding me, Glenn.
Yeah.
So it's hotel 20, and you get a 25% discount. So, and that 25% discount is really it's an amazing discount. And DM me if you have any problems. I will help you through the process.
Cool. Hey, Ty. So, thinking about this, when we're coming back, you have to I guess it's time to rethink who and who may not be best suited for jobs in this new era. Have you put any thoughts into how you're going to be rehiring and how you might take this advantage to restructure the company during this time? Because I hear a lot of companies saying, hey, now's the time we can hit that reset button.
Yeah, it's, Anthony's point was very valid. It seems like in our industry for such a long period of time, you just literally had to find, does someone have a pulse? Forget anything else, just get a warm body in the job. It'll be interesting to see as we come out of this, what that's going to look like, because, I think not only in hospitality, I think just every industry in general, there will be companies that won't come back and just will not make it. And so does that leave a lot of really good, talented people out there to cherry pick from? I think from the direction that I've been given my team at this point is that when we start to determine, do we need to create some new positions within our organization? Let's make sure that we're being very thoughtful in our approach as far as what the skill level looks like and the talent pool. I think it will create some very unique opportunities for those people willing to wait it out.
Interesting. Brad, how do you see it?
Yeah, I think Ty is right on. Look, there's been a war on talent for years with unemployment in and around the sub 4.0 mark. So it's been difficult to go ahead and find some really good talent in some cases. What we're seeing over the past 30, 45 days is tremendous grade A paper being pushed our way, resumes that we would not have seen as recently as 30 days ago, not just in our space.
Right.
Glenn, but in other types of industries that are forcing us to take a look at, what would we do with that skill set if we were able to bring them into our fold? And so what we're doing as a senior leadership team is we're already starting to plan for when we come out of this, what do we want to look like? How do we continue to differentiate? And what sort of skill set, business acumen, and talent can we bring in from other industries to help elevate our platform? So we're excited about that aspect of what's going on.
Fantastic. All right. So I got an interesting question here. How will hotels be able to absorb higher wages for those top talented people that you're going to wind up grabbing?
Well, if I could just jump in and say my initial response to that is top talent is going to have to take a discount because coming in, we all have to help each other. And I don't think you're going to be able to expect the same salary levels coming out of this because hotels, listen, we all have to help each other. And I think if you're a top talented person, you can demand a certain fee, but you're not going to get it because, listen, organizations are suffering, so you may not get it. That's just my opinion.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think it's just a total reset button has been hit at this point. I think, kind of going back to Brad's comment earlier, speaking more specific at the hotel level, I think it's imperative that we stay very firm in our rate strategy, that we try not to drop rates, because when you factor in, if we're taking lower rates for our rooms, it's going to impact ultimately what we can pay people. Again, we just got to be cautious.
Chip, I still think there are not enough people out there on the hotelier side that are getting politically involved. And every time you're on, I got to ask you the same question, because our audience is growing and we got to educate them. What advice do you have for folks to get politically involved today? What are those initial steps they can take to be heard on Capitol Hill? People know who you are now. How can they be one of those people?
Look, first and easiest is just go to our website, AHLA.com, and there's a button. It'll pop up right in front of you. It says Hotels Act. You can sign up for that. Right now, we're creating letters to send to Congress. We have this goal of creating 200,000 letters to send to Congress on the revisions to the CARES Act that our industry needs. So that's the easiest thing. It doesn't require anything except you filling out your information. And what that does is each time there's an issue where we need to contact members of Congress, you just put in your name and address and click send, and it sends a pre-populated letter from you to your specific members of Congress based on your mailing address. So that's critically important. We need everyone to do that, because, I think Anthony mentioned a moment ago, or somebody mentioned a moment ago, that we're going to get through this, but there's going to be another great need at some point down the road, hopefully a long way down the road. But we want to make sure that our industry stays unified. That could be one of the silver linings. The second thing is something I've been preaching for the last 3 years to anyone who will listen. And that is, if you're in our industry, you really need to do what I like to call adopt an elected official. In other words, find an elected official that you can create a personal relationship with. It doesn't need to be your member of Congress. That's great. It could be a member of your local city council, your county commission, your governor, your lieutenant governor, but somebody where you can have a personal relationship with, that we can depend on you at giving us access to that person if we need to get a point across. Because if the CARES Act has proven anything, sometimes we really do need government in a way we never could have possibly expected. Now, typically for most of us in private industry, kind of want government to stay out of our lives. We feel like, and I think history has proven, that we can do this on our own and do it quite well. But these times like this, where there are emergencies that require the entire nation to come together, we're going to rely on some sort of government involvement and engagement. And it's at that moment where this industry has to be unified, because I can promise you the other industries are unified. They are having their voices heard. And if our voice is not heard, we will be left behind.
That's interesting that you said that other industries are unified. And I apologize, I think Len may have lost power. One of the things that I'm concerned about as a citizen, not even a hotel person, is the need to ensure that we get the vaccine, ensure that we are social distancing, ensure that we're taking care of each other, but also the need to get everybody back to work. And that seems to be the question in Washington right now. Somebody has their foot on the gas, somebody has their foot on the brake, and there's in between. What are you seeing out of Washington? Are you seeing that there are going to be reasonable decisions made, hopefully, that we're going to be looking at? Yes, listen, number one priority is our healthcare system and making sure that we're staying safe. And obviously a very, very close second is our economy. Where do you see it, where you're sitting in the conversations you're having?
Anthony, I think that is the $64,000 question, to harken back to an earlier time in American history. And the president alluded to that the other day when he suggested this will be the most important decision he's ever made his entire life. And I would guess, given his career, he's made a lot of important decisions. Here's the reality, and I think we got to keep this in mind. A dear friend of mine from way back in my days in middle school works for one of the largest insurance companies in the world. He pointed out to me the other day, he said, last year there were 38,000 automobile deaths in America because of accidents. If we lowered the speed limit in the United States to 10 miles an hour, we could eliminate 37,000 of those 38,000 deaths. We could save 37,000 lives by lowering the speed limit to 10 miles an hour. The reality is no one's going to do that, because we've all essentially said we're willing to take that risk. We know that more people will die because we're going to engage in driving faster to get to where we want to go. And that's just driving. We start thinking about the economy, and that decision is, yes, if we listen only to the physicians, the easiest, the best, and the safest way to make sure no one ever gets the coronavirus is for us to shut this economy down and keep it shut down for an extended period of time, for everyone to stay at home. No worry about social distancing. You just can't go out. But what would that do to our economy? And then we ask the question, what does poverty do to the health condition of the average American? Because the longer this economy stays shut, the more poverty there is going to be, the more mental depression there's going to be, the more financial decisions that people can't make themselves are going to become, those are going to be incredibly difficult. And what does that do to the health of people as well? So I don't know the answer to that, but I do know this: keeping the economy shut down for an extended period of time, only to make sure no one gets the coronavirus, is unreasonable.
You know, that's the best answer I've heard since this has been going on. And I appreciate that very in-depth and very thoughtful answer, because I haven't looked at it that way, to be perfectly honest with you. I think I did a little bit because I'm a businessman, obviously, but I do have friends that are doctors, and I have a very dear friend I talk to every day, and he's on the front line, and he is airway management. And those stories that I'm hearing are just not stories I'd ever want to tell or really think about. So it's interesting, because you do have to manage both. But thank you for your very thoughtful answer.
Thanks.
I just want to say I'm back. So that rainstorm, the thunderstorms that we're having out here, couldn't keep me away from this conversation.
And just so you know, everybody was very impressed with my ability to host the show.
I'm sure. I was actually going to say, I just hope no one realized that I'm unneeded now. So this won't be the beginning of my demise, guys. This is all I've got left in my whole life. Don't take this away from me. All right. So Anthony, you've got to ask the next question, because I have no idea where we are.
No, so Brad and Ty, how do you feel about that Chip's answer? I thought that was like I said, a great answer. But
I think that was the most clearly articulated response I've seen to that question out of anyone. So Chip, we sincerely appreciate what you're doing for us on behalf of our industry, and I'd like to get your perception on something. It seems that when we watch the news or other programs on TV, you hear about the other industries that are struggling. In particular, you'll hear about restaurants and airlines and cruise ships. It seems like hotels, just in general, they don't even think about us to a degree, even after all the efforts that you and others have done like that. From your perception, what do you think causes that? Whether is it Washington? Is it the media?
I've been wrestling with that question for quite some time, and I wish I had a good answer for you. I can tell you this, that in the administration itself, the Trump administration, they are, for good reason, very cautious about ever mentioning hotels themselves, only because they believe that invites all sorts of skepticism to anything that they would do after that. Because the question, I've been interviewed probably well over 100 times in the last 3 weeks, probably going on 200 times. And I bet a third of the times that I'm dealing with someone, particularly at a newspaper, they will ask the question, well, how's this going to help Trump hotels? And I remind them again and again, look, there are 56,000 hotels in the US. I think he has like 8 or 9. So this is not part of the equation. We're not thinking about how it's going to affect Trump hotels. And I can promise you, he's not thinking about how it's going to affect Trump hotels. He has nothing to do with the daily operations of that hotel company. But I say that because I believe from the administration's perspective, they go out of their way not to mention hotels because they don't want to have the media come after them and say, aha, you're just doing it for your own business. So you set that aside for a moment. Then the second part is, why aren't we considered the same way that you have the airlines, the cruise ships, and in some cases, the restaurants? I don't know the answer to that. I think there's always been the misperception that, Marriott, Hilton, IHG, Hyatt, that they own all the hotels, and that they aren't looking at us as we are, the small business owners, the tens of thousands of small business owners that actually own the hotels and operate the hotels. And frankly, that's a problem that we have, and we've got to share the burden of that for the years and years and years of not fully explaining how our industry works. But I can promise you this, we continue to tell that story, that the hotel industry is collectively an amazing small business owner, mom and pop businesses. Anthony's show was the greatest example of that, right? Mom and pop businesses. These are the actual owners that run this place, and what they do matters in their local community. And so we've got to continue to tell that story. If any of the fault falls on our shoulders for not telling it long enough, I'll take some of the blame, but I can promise you we're telling it now every day as loud as we can.
Yeah. I think you're right, though, too. It's really up to us to make sure that we're actively involved, whether you adopt, your senator, your representative, whoever it may be. I think it's the voice has to be from all of us.
One of the things that we're doing is I'm working with a company that we're getting the funding, and it'll probably come through this week for a documentary. We're trying to put a documentary together on what's going on in the hospitality industry right now. So we can see the stoppage, and we can see places like the Four Seasons and other places across the country that are now across the world that are now becoming places of safety for our doctors and our nurses. And we want to tell that story. So we're working on that. We're working on the treatment, and we'll probably interview, hopefully, some people, a lot of people that have been on the show, and then watching our hospitality industry open in 6 months, a year. So we're committed to that, and I'll tell you more about it as things go forward. But I think it's really critical that we tell our story.
And I do want to say, people out there are really appreciating what not just you are doing, Chip, but everybody out there on your team and on Capitol Hill, and for you executives out there as well for keeping things moving forward in this time of crisis.
Well, Brad said something I think that is really compelling and really important. Leaders lead. It's what they do. Chip is in his position, and Brad and Ty, and you're in your position because someone thought you were the best of the best and the best leaders possible. And I'm telling you, it just makes me feel good that people like you are in that position, because this is where your career is made. This is where your reputation is made. When the last 10 years of growth was great, but that's not where leaders' reputation is made. So all of you, just an amazing job. And Chip, you've been everywhere. I've listened to almost everything you've said, and it's unbelievable that you can do at this level, and you probably get at least 20 minutes of sleep a night. So that probably does you well.
Well, Anthony, I love to put things in sports terms. If I could show you if I could flip my camera around, you can see that my basement is just covered in sports stuff. But to your point, it's really easy to be the backup quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. They were the Super Bowl champs. You didn't have to do much. You're along for the ride. That team's winning anyway, and you're going to look great. And you're going to be a Super Bowl champion. It's really difficult to be the starting quarterback for my favorite team, the Miami Dolphins, when your team is terrible, right? And what can you do in a situation like that to help your team win? That's where, as you pointed out, where real leadership comes to play is in difficult times, people stepping up. You gentlemen step up on a daily basis. I mean, I've known Glenn since before this whole thing started. And just to see what you are providing, Glenn, and now with Anthony on a daily basis to help our entire hospitality community come together and share information that people are so thirsty for, it makes a big difference. And I want to thank you for that.
Well, thank you for being here and supporting us. And thanks to everybody out there for helping create this community during a time that is so important, and allowing Anthony and I to be that conduit for information for you. So, Anthony, any more questions, or should we start
I just want to kind of go back to what Chip just said, and I think that's really important. The backup quarterback, you said when they get in the game or when they're on the bench, it's thinking about winning, and that number one quarterback has got to win the game. But really right now, what I think the position you're in and a lot of us are in is not so much about only just winning and thinking about winning the game, but it's about the morale of that bench. So the backup quarterback is the person that's supposed to make sure the morale of that bench and that locker room is solid. And I think right now, what I'm most concerned about is the morale of our bench, the morale of the people that are taking it on the chin every single day. The people that are really, they're hearing that their business is being, is having struggles, but then they're hearing people in their family are getting sick, in some situations passing away. Right now, it's the leadership that's got to keep that morale up, and it's so obviously we want to look to winning, but right now we can't win if our team isn't prepared once we're back in the game. And I think that's what you're really kind of helping us with. I think when we look at you and we look at that strength and we look at your access, I think right now that we feel comfortable that we know the access is there. It's not only the power, but that we have access through you makes us all feel better. So thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Great. Maybe some final thoughts right now. Chip, any final thoughts?
Look, every single day, we just had Easter yesterday, and for those of the faith that I share, what an incredible message that I think can translate to what happens the day after Easter and the day after that. Look, someone once said that the darkest moments are usually followed by the brightest light, and I think the bright light is coming. And to Anthony's point, we just got to hang in there. And so much of that is attitude. And that's why I think people have asked me, why do you think this industry that seems to be getting hit the hardest is best positioned? And I think it's because the folks in this industry, including those here on this call, are the very people that have the best attitude towards life, an attitude of giving, serving, and hospitality that translates into making it to the next day because you have that positive mindset that this too is going to get better.
Great. Brad?
Yeah, well said, Chip. Look, tremendous people in a tremendous industry. We will come out of this, and not only come out of it, but we'll come out of it stronger with some lessons learned and some things that we'll apply going forward. I couldn't be more encouraged by the things that I'm seeing, particularly over the last 5, 7, 10 days, and the way that we are pulling together as an industry, and the way that I'm seeing other leaders lead this industry through this challenge, folks like Chip and others that are really taking the message to where it needs to be heard. Going back real quickly to a comment, I think it was really, I haven't thought of it that way, Chip. Nobody thinks there's a Mr. Delta. Nobody thinks there's a Mr. American Airlines, but there is a Mr. Marriott, Mr. Hilton. And I think maybe the hotel industry was kind of looked at in that way versus some of the other industries during these types of events. Chip and his team have done a tremendous job of getting us a voice on the Hill there so that we're not overlooked like we were in the past with some of these issues. So thank you, Chip. But we're going to come out swinging, Glenn. We're going to be fine. And I pray for everybody. To Chip's point, I also share his faith. I'm a Christian. I'm a believer. And it wasn't lost on me that yesterday my Lord and Savior rose to take the sins of this planet, and that we'll come out of this and we're going to be fine. He's got this in his hands.
Great. Glad you feel that way. I'm a godless heathen, so I don't have that same sort of faith, but I'm trying. Trying.
All right.
Although I do want everybody to know that my faith is in my Passover brisket that I made, and it came out pretty good. So I do have some sort of faith there whatsoever. Ty, some final thoughts from you, sir.
I just, again, Glenn, appreciate you and Anthony both. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Chip, again, thank you for all that you do for us. You're such a great leader for our industry there in Washington, D.C. I guess, Glenn, two things actually come to mind. I think it's important we take an opportunity to give kudos to those men and women out there right now who, every day when I'm talking to my GMs and sales leaders, they're on the front lines right now. They're in the trenches with this. And I'm genuinely amazed by how well they're handling this, the great things that they're doing to put a good foot forward, to take care of those guests. And so kudos to them. The other thing I would say, I don't know if this is good. I kind of view this as a positive thing. I tend to have this, there's been a tendency with my career that I have changed jobs or different aspects of the industry at unique times. I go back and look in the late 90s when there was a financial crisis, I changed jobs. 9/11, 2008. And this is what I've always noticed through this. When times are really good, you have a tendency, you're always going to learn things, but I really firmly believe you learn the most during the tough times.
100%.
That's when it really challenges you and it causes you to reach deep down in your gut and you pull things out that really will take you to the next level. So I think all of us have to look at this as that time. What will we become as a result of this? So I'm just so happy to be a part of this industry, and I think we've got good times ahead.
And it sounds to me like we got to make sure that you never change jobs again.
What I was going to say is I'm going to look at my portfolio and I'm going to basically decide to sell when the price changes jobs. So please let me know next time you change jobs so I can sell.
We got it.
But to everyone's point is the hospitality industry. When you look at Abraham Maslow, that came up with Maslow's hierarchy of needs in 1943, came up with 7 needs. The first 3 are safety, shelter, and food. And we are the only industry that provides that. So we are the most important industry, I believe, out there outside of the healthcare industry, because if everything else went sideways, we provide shelter and we provide safety. And so for people to look at our industry as an afterthought is to look at your basic foundation of needs as an afterthought. So I'll leave it there.
Wow. Beautiful. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here today. You guys really wowed our crowd out there, and we've had so many great numbers and listening here. So hope to have you guys all on again. So take care. Have a good one. Be good, guys. We'll see you. And Anthony,
thank you so much.
let's wrap this show
well,
up.
I want to say thank you to Gregory Henderson from Roxbury, my dear friend who I know took on a really big adventure up at Roxbury, and he was on today, and he said thank you, Chip. So I'm so happy that he was on today, and I'm so happy that he can give some hopefully a light at the end of the tunnel for my friend and also for everyone else. I mean, Chip speaks, and I just want to start making my signs for president for him.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Man, I love that guy. And I love that he's out there fighting every day for each and every one of us. Speaking of all of you, thank you so much for tuning in and making all of this possible and giving us the ability to share our positive love with all of you and help us get your way to the other end. Yeah.
And listen, we never know what's going to come out of anyone's mouth or what information we're going to disperse on any given day. So please, every day, 12 o'clock, make this an important part of your day because it's an important part of our day. And we're not here for any other reason but to give information. So today you may not get the information you need, but tomorrow you might. We have some incredible guests. It's getting so to the point where I probably apologize to Glenn 100 times because I keep sending him people and he keeps dealing with people. And it's just, we're getting so many great guests.
It's unbelievable.
So thank you for the producer, for our producers, and thank you for Glenn. But please hang in there with us. We're going to keep providing as much information as possible.
And if you miss any of that information, be sure to subscribe to our weekly newsletter. Bring that one back up. Now, boom, text the word hotel to 66866. Get all the content that we're doing here every week, plus stuff you may not be seeing on Anthony and our sites out there. So I encourage you, text the word hotel to 66866. Just going to ask you for an email address. Pretty simple, pretty easy. And then we get to interact every Sunday night when we send out our weekly newsletter. Anthony, I got to tell you, I came away with this show pretty inspired today. What great people.
I tell you, it's the leaders lead, and I love the fact that he said that. You know what tomorrow is? If I can digress for a second, tomorrow's an important day. Tomorrow is Kevin Abernathy's 50th birthday. Kevin Abernathy is a good friend of mine, and he's a captain on the police department. And I just want to say thank you for you and the NYPD and all the workers out there being in the front line for us. So happy 50th, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.
All right. Excellent. Again, thank you all for being here today. Tomorrow, we're going to have a great show with NEWH and some college students going to talk about what their experiences are like. And then we've got a week packed full of other stuff. And Anthony, you know, we just made a deal to get the brand new CEO of Radisson Hotel Group on our show. We don't know what day yet, but I just had a conversation with them. We're going to get it scheduled hopefully this week or next week. So the big names are really starting to come on our show.
And as I understand it, is this going to be his first real interview as the president?
First official interview as CEO of Radisson Hotel Group in the Americas. So thank you, Jim Alderman, for trusting us with that interview. We'll see you guys back here tomorrow at noon. Any final thoughts, Anthony, before I hit the end broadcast button?
I just feel blessed to be able to do the show and to be partnering with you. And thank you for all our guests and also all of our listeners.
And I'll tell you what, things are pretty damn freaking shitty out there, but I'm so glad that you and I have become so much even closer during this last month. Who would have thunk it?
Right? Yeah, and you know what? There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and this is stamina. I keep telling my children, I keep telling myself. I had a moment. I had to go for a drive, and my drive was an hour of Anthony. You need more stamina. You think this is going to be over tomorrow? You think we're all going to be traveling by next week? Mm-hmm. You got to deep down. You got to get your stamina back. And so we all need it. And so no matter how strong or how weak you are, it's okay. And I think that's one thing. And maybe there's on a Feel Good Friday, we start bringing on psychologists and we start bringing on people talking through what people are going through, because I don't want that to be an afterthought. I don't want that to be where you're seeing other people like Chips and other leaders step up and you're like, I wish I can be that strong. I wish I can be that person, but I'm not, and feel like more of a failure. And feel like, and really double down on, I'm not doing that. I don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. I think that we're just doing this right now. I haven't said this to you before, but I think one of the things we need to do in the next week or two is we need to have those kind of people on our show to talk through this. And so Feel Good Friday could become also where we're reaching out, we're helping people, because we talk about the financial part of it, we talk about the unemployment part of it, we talk about the physical ailments of this that you're seeing, but the ailment that you're not seeing that is going to manifest itself over the period of days and weeks and months and a year I think we really need to start focusing on that as well. We're not experts, but I think having some people on, I think will help some people out there, because there's not one person listening to my voice right now that hasn't had their moment.
Yeah, that's right. And that's human, that's natural, and that's part of where we are right now. So be sure to tune with us every day for not just business help, but spiritual and hopefully some emotional help as well. Thanks, guys. We love you. Thanks for being here. We couldn't be doing it without you. So for Anthony and myself, thanks for being with us here today, and we'll see you tomorrow at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time, or daylight savings time, really.